Okay, welcome back. I'm here again with my friend Javier. This is part two of my interview with Javier, who, if you go to part one of this interview, you'll learn more about Javier and his background and what he's doing. We were talking about this warm-up kind of approach, and it's sort of a warm-up and a workout at the same time, isn't it? Really, I mean, yeah. Yeah, I was trying to distinguish on one of my videos a warm-out and a workout. A warm-out actually can incorporate a workout, and it flows together nicely. So let's talk a little bit more about how you started this, or how would you start a student that's starting to work with you on this?
Well, the first thing I would do with them is have them play the notes as I started in the first video, descending, descending major arpeggios and major scales, because that's the easiest thing to do.
Can you show us again?
Yes.
Thanks.
So starting on the F pitch. And then go down that by half steps.
Okay.
Which is actually fairly easy because it just sits well at that range. Right. And then do the same thing in major scales.
All right. So then you go down by half steps from
Half
there?
steps, yeah.
Can you go one more for me, please? Good. Why don't you move in a little bit closer? Okay, that's great. Okay, so then you go the E flat and the D down to the C?
Down to pedal C.
And then what would you do once you get to the pedal C?
Once I got to pedal C, so you go down the scale and back up the scale.
Right.
After that, I would have my students start in the middle staff again, F, and really try and work for that A. Which would be the hardest thing to do, because at that point you're bending the pitch up.
Okay.
When we usually bend notes, like when we do stuff like this, we always bend down.
Yes.
And the thing about the instrument, you usually have to bend up and down. It's one of those instruments where you gotta be flexible going up and down. When we do exercises, we're going. We go up and down to get all the flexibility down. So when you're bending notes, you should be able to bend up and down.
Absolutely. Right.
So when I have them work up to the third, I'm actually having them bend up to the third.
Really? No, I would guess that's not so easy.
It isn't very easy at all. No. But the thing is, once you get to the point where you're using your air efficiently, that note it bends in there. And that's the goal we want to get. We want to become very flexible on the instrument. Because the instrument, you have to be flexible with the mouthpiece. The buttons do some of the work, but it's all breath and air control and the lips positioning, your tongue positioning. Right. So when I'll have them do that for...
How do you get past that break? There's a little break, right?
Yeah.
And how do you get past
Actually, once you get past that break, if you go down a half step, it's right there again. Okay. So you never get rid of it until you get the whole...
So each interval series is kind of independent and has to be worked on accordingly.
At that point, it's just literally where you have your tongue placed. And if we all know from doing slur exercises, tongue placement is very crucial to how you put it to get the right airflow.
So when you're talking about tongue placement, is in your playing, and I would imagine everybody's a little bit different, but in your playing, is the tongue in a considerably different place, say from a low note to a high note?
Well,
how much of a change is there?
Well, it depends on what you're playing. Like if I were to do some of the Clark study stuff, where they have your triplet chromatics, and I can do that to the point now where I do it 3 octaves. If I start in a low F and go to a high F,
Want to show us?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I'll do the exercise, and the goal is to keep the whole thing in one breath and consistent with the tongue position. There you go.
It's one breath.
Yeah, one breath. But notice how I started in a real low, and the tongue just kept following where I was going. And the reason I was able to do it without really warming up for it, it's because I spent, I guess, to the point now almost a whole year working on this exercise where I'm using my tongue all over the place in just the lead pipe.
Interesting.
Now, so when you get to the point where you're slotting all these major scales and major arpeggios, your tongue is so sensitive to all the pitches in the instrument. in all the octaves. Because the whole thing is to do it in all the octaves, not just one octave. Even whether you're a classical player or a jazz player or elite player, this exercise will help you, hone in all the pitches in the range you're working with.
Right. Now, I know when I do something like that, maybe there's a break for me about an A or something like that.
Yeah.
And so what I find helps is I play a little bit. I won't go so fast first. When you started off, I would guess that you didn't do it so quickly.
Oh, no. Yeah. I had to work up to it, of course.
You had worked up to that speed. And another thing I think it's important to point out, I remember even when you were in high school, you were practicing a lot.
Yes.
This isn't a gift. I mean, you have a gift, you have a talent, but it's cultivated. And how much would you practice?
Well, I know during my master's and my undergrad, I was practicing at least on my own time, at least 4 hours a day, at least. And that's not including rehearsals and classes and then working. That was part of it. But I wouldn't just play real hard to hurt myself, because you can't do that. If you want to be a working player, you can't be tired all the time or hurting all the time.
That's an important concept I talked about recently. Could you go into that when you say how do you practice so that you can practice? I mean, 4 hours, that's a long time. But I remember Mendez used to say he'd practice at least 4 to 8 hours.
Yeah, and when he performed, he was always on top of it and always very efficient at what he was doing.
Right. So how do you practice 4 hours?
Well, the thing is, when you practice, it's not about... Of course, in your routine, you're going to have that point where you're going to push yourself a little further to get better range, better flexibility, better tongue, and you're going to spend more time on that. But the thing is, when you're working on stuff you're already used to, like your fundamentals, where you're doing tonguing, slurring, range exercises, you know that you have to reach to a point where you don't play hard to make it work. You get to the reason you're practicing is to make it easier, not to make it harder for yourself. So you have your pyramid, you have your levels. You do your first routine, which could be pedal tones, long tones. You wouldn't use all your energy just to do that. You have to get to the point where it's easy. And that's the whole goal. The instrument shouldn't be difficult and painful. It shouldn't.
Okay, I agree.
Yeah. So you practice all these things. You gotta do it efficiently. I would spend 4 hours mainly working on chord changes. With the real book stuff.
Right.
Because that you can go through 3 or 4 tunes in 2 hours easily.
Yes.
But for technical stuff, I would probably spend maybe an hour to an hour and a half at most working on technical stuff.
Right.
So it would cover tonguing, slurring, range stuff, even sight reading, transposition on the instrument.
Right. Yeah. I remember that you cover a lot of the basics. For example, I remember you playing some beautiful Charlier etudes and things like that, and. So do you still work on those kinds of things? Or I know you do mostly commercial stuff now, but how important was that kind of training for what it is that you do today?
Actually, I actually a good friend of mine, John Bradley, was telling me about stuff that he does, and he got me on it as well, where we actually play through the first 8 to 10 Charlier stuff on a almost daily basis. Just go through them, not necessarily playing them perfect, but just trying to get into the point where they almost sound as good every single time.
Right.
We do that, and also I do a lot of top tone stuff. I'll go to the first 5 or 6. So I'm always doing technical stuff on the instrument.
Right.
Now, since playing classical is not my strength, I can do it, but not as well as other classical musicians do who spend all their time doing that. My goal is to try and make it sound as good as I can.
Right.
But I probably play the Charlier about maybe 3 times a week. The first 8 to 10.
Right. I think I've noticed that about the great players here and everywhere. The great players everywhere, of course. Is that maybe they have a strength, but they also try to cultivate what it is they may not be as strong at in order to balance things out. And you never know when you go to work. Like you were at Warner Brothers yesterday. What did you do yesterday?
It was just I was actually a background musician for one of the TV shows.
Okay,
that's all it was.
So you never know, right?
Yeah.
So you did that. And what did you do this weekend?
This weekend I had what's called the Peruvian Festival. It happened in I played with two groups that day. I was playing lead on both of them, and they were back to back. And the night before, I had another 2-show thing with another 2 salsa bands. Friday was a big band show.
Right.
Thursday was another big band show.
Right.
So it was a lot of heavy playing with soloing involved.
So when you finish a night of heavy blowing, what do you do to
as a warm down?
Do you do a warm down or?
I'll just do some pedal work.
Yeah.
I'll just
Can you show us? Maybe?
Yeah, I'll just take it down. Just stuff like that.
Right.
Nice and relaxed, not overplaying, not loud.
Just what's comfortable, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just to relax the lips because they were, playing pretty tight for a whole hour and a half or 2 hours.
Right. So when you start again the next day, I talk about having a point of reference, to start the day. That I kind of start the day. Usually, for me, it's kind of, I did it on one of my videos where I start in the pedal register just because it's easy and soft and it's, But what do you do for your point, or right up? What do you do when you pick up the horn?
Actually, the first thing I do is do the lead pipe.
Can you do that? I know you did that on the previous tape, but do it again for us if you would.
Yeah. I'll just find the F, which is the easiest vibrating tone on the lead pipe, and I'll just literally go down the major arpeggios.
Right.
And just bend right through it.
Can you do it again? Next.
I lost it there at the end. I lost it there at the
Cool.
end.
And then after that, you do.
I'll do the major scales. Same way going down.
Got it. Okay, good. So this will end part 2, and and then we'll have one more. Okay.
Yeah.
But this is really wonderful material, and so this is Javier Gonzalez, this wonderful trumpet player from Los Angeles. And Javier, just put in a promotion for you. Do you have a web page or anything like that going on?
It's in the works.
It's in the works.
I haven't done it yet.
Javier is one of these players that's so busy playing he doesn't have time to take care of some of the business, right?
Yeah.
So that's one reason I'm having him out here today. But you do teach in the area?
Yes.
Okay. And if they wanted to get in touch with you, do you have an email address?
Yeah.
What's your email address?
It's havtrumpet@earthling.net. That's JAV, the word trumpet, @earthling.net.
Okay, cool. So check it out. We'll be right back.